Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm so excited about this show today and about RockerMike and our new guest to speak about a topic that many of us love to do deep dives on, and that is true crime and conspiracy. And so I'm really excited for you guys to see this information that the guest has to present involving the notorious Son of Sam case and the possibility of the narrative that we've been given is not being totally accurate. Now, with that being said, I did want to take a moment before we got into the episode to, first of all, just give a huge thank you to all of our patrons and our producers here on Esoteric Atlanta. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible. And I am so grateful and appreciative to all of you who continue to help fund this work. I wanted to make sure to get that in because I know that this month specifically of January has been a crazy month with everything that is going on in the world. We've kind of been a little off schedule due to the swearing in and the confirmations and all that kind of stuff. There's just been a lot of pressing world events going on that have definitely needed our attention over deep dives. So I did again want to take a moment to thank our patrons and our producers. And before we get into the episode, I just wanted to also again talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, which of course is me, with the Esoteric Academy, me and Paula. The Esoteric Academy is like a virtual mystery school, and we literally just this past weekend had our first live call and our first live class. And I had so much fun getting to know, I think we have 70 people in the academy thus far, and the ones that were able to make it, I had so much fun getting to know you guys. Now, if you are on the academy, if you happen to miss a call where you get to have a live call, or you miss a live class, what we are doing is we are recording the calls and we are recording the classes. The way that we have recorded the classes, though, it's the cameras on me. While I'm teaching, I can see everybody in the Zoom, but we've got the camera just on me, so our students don't have to worry about being filmed, because I know that's really stressful to get filmed while you're exercising. But as I told them, you do tend to suck your stomach in more, which is good when you got the camera on you. But what we did yesterday in our live class was we basically did a foundational class. And so for the first class, I walked through the foundations of spirituality and exercise. Like, we talked a lot about the chakras, the bandhas, the different pathways of energy in the body. And my point in doing the first class, actually the first few classes we're going to do as foundational classes, is because my goal with this academy and with teaching you guys is to give you the information that you need so you can start to kind of rewire the way that you view exercise, right? The exercise is not something to punish yourself with, but it's a way to actually bring vitality into your body. It's a way to activate your chakras. It's a way to burn off karma. And so that is literally what we worked on yesterday, is we worked on the lower belly with Mula Bandha and the first two chakras. We looked at the shoulders, Anahata, the rhomboids, which of course are responsible for the breath work, which is the pranayama. We looked at the foot and the way the big toe and the inner thigh connect into that bandha at the base of the perineum that locks in Kundalini. So with that being said, if you are a part of the academy and you missed the live call and you missed the foundational class, those should be up on the website now, so you can go back and take the live class in your own time. And for those who took the light class, you can take it again if you need to. And if you want to hear what we discussed in the live call, you can go back and listen to that as well. Now, just again, a reminder, because we're coming down to the wire, on February 20th of 2025, we will be going into our grand opening. And at that point, the tuition is going to raise from $25 a month to $40 a month. But if you purchase in right now, before the grand opening, your tuition will be locked in at $25 a month. And honestly, I know I've said this before, but there are thousands and thousands of dollars worth of information on this Esoteric Academy. You've got so many different courses, from the Bhagavad Gita to the alchemy of movement, to meditation courses. We have 3 different playlists of exercise videos that I've created. We've got guests that are coming in. Cindy Ola has just sent over a mobility course. Todd Roderick is going to be doing a Vedic chanting course coming very soon. And so if you buy in now, you're going to be set at $25 a month for your tuition, which is literally the price of a day drop-in at a yoga studio. So great price. The $40 a month is also a great price too, but this is even even better because it saves you $15 a month off the price. And I was speaking to Paula last night. I'm going to be looking into doing some mommy and me classes. I know we've got a lot of teenage girls, but we also have a lot of little girls, little ones. And so I'm going to be looking into doing some classes that you mothers or fathers can do with your children as well. And so that will be coming very, very soon. We're also looking at doing an Ashtanga beginner course as well. Just a lot of stuff going on at the Esoteric Academy, and it is a private platform. So everything that you share with the group is always going to be kept in private. And so anyway, all that information, those links are down in the description box below. You get 7 days of a free trial as well. So you can come and try it out for 7 days if you want. And if it's not for you, you can close your account, no problem. But with that being said, let's get into the episode. Before we get into this episode, just a quick PSA. Here on Esoteric Atlanta, I have made it very clear that we run this channel with the utmost integrity. And part of that means that we do not buy views, buy subscribers, or buy likes. I have very, very strong feelings about this. I feel like if you are a researcher, or if you are somebody who is in like a truther or a disclosure community, if you go about pushing your work out by buying views and buying subscribers and buying likes, then what you're doing is lying and manipulating. I have a huge, huge moral issue with people who do that. So we don't do that on Esoteric Atlanta. A lot of the people, unfortunately, that I find myself in the same community with do that. With that being said, as many of you guys know, because of the topics that we cover here on Esoteric Atlanta, we often find ourselves in shadow banning hell. And I have now, in my own research, tried to figure out ways to get my channel back out of the corner and back out in the algorithms. And one thing that you guys can do for me, if you are watching this, that can help with the channel, because we don't buy views, we don't buy subscribers, and we don't buy likes. We want to be integral with who is actually watching this channel. What you guys can do is actually hit that like button. If we have at least 500 likes per video, that will help push these videos back out into the algorithm cycle. And with 54,000 subscribers on this channel, that should be easy for us to get 500 likes. So please get your good karma for the day and just hit that like button so we can get this video out there. It also helps if you comment on the video. So even if you want to throw us a flag from what country you're from, that would really, really help us out. And because of what we're talking about today, in honor of the victim that we're going to be talking about today and the life that she led and life that she lost, we want to make sure that this video does get out to the public. So please, guys, please help us, one of the few channels out there that practices integrity, and just hit that like button. Thank you so much, guys. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Of course, my name is Bryce, and I'm really, really, really excited about this show today. I have with me co-hosting one of my favorite guests and person I consider a friend now, my Yankee friend, RockerMike.
How you doing, Bryce?
Do you know, Mike, before we get into it, a lot of our viewers from our friends from other countries, they think all Americans are Yankees. And I have to correct them and say, no, that's just where Mike's from. The New York Yankees. So, and I am so excited today because Mike has brought a new friend to the show, Criminal Justice Chris. We're going to be talking about another case, the Leslie Zaret case, and I'm really excited to get into it today. Before we get into more of that, I just want to go ahead and share with you guys, I am going to be putting Criminal Justice Chris's blog down in the description box, along with some episodes that Mike did with her a few years ago over the Son of Sam case so that you guys can actually look through all of her work, because this is a really, really fascinating case. And I'm really glad. I'm going to ask before we get into it, guys. We are talking today. I want this up. We kind of off camera spoke about this. This episode today is about Leslie Zaret. And unfortunately, she did lose her life many years ago, but we want to honor her and we want to be respectful in the comment section about her, because this could be any one of us, our sisters, our mothers, our girlfriends. You know, this unfortunately, this happens in life, and we need to be respectful to the dead and respectful to her family, because when somebody loses their life in this type of manner, they're not the only victim. Right. The ones that are left behind are also the victims. And so we want to be very respectful about that, even though we're going to be cracking open this case. And I know Mike and Chris probably will agree to that, that we just want to make sure that this is about Leslie. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to you, Mike.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Bryce, for always having me on. I appreciate that. Well, welcome back, Chris. This is kind of a podcast reunion for us. You were on the Son of Sam Chronicles about 2 years ago for 2 episodes. It was like a part 1 and part 2 about the Son of Sam letters, where you dissected them with some very interesting information about them, which Bryce is going to put the links up to that show in the comment section or wherever you put them. Leslie Zaret was a teenage girl who lost her life violently in 1974 in Queens, New York. You have a lot of information, Chris, about this case. Over the years, there's been some speculation of Son of Sam involvement in that, whether it was David Berkowitz or the cult that was behind the Son of Sam and involved in the Son of Sam. I want you to basically, give us a timeline of what happened here, and tell us what you know, because you've been in touch with people very close to the family of Leslie, and you have some very interesting information from what you told me. So go ahead, Chris. Tell us what you know.
Okay, well, Leslie Zaret, she disappeared on August 16th, 1974. Her body was found in the morning on August 17th, 1974. She was last seen around John Bowen High School. Somebody who was passing by on a bus saw Leslie, and that was the last time that she was seen. When she was found at PS 203 off of Springfield.
I know exactly where that is.
It was in a schoolyard that was known for orgies and parties. All of her clothes had been removed. They had been laid out neatly beside her, and a comb had been inserted into her.
Wow.
And she had been manually asphyxiated or strangled.
Strangled to death. That was the cause of death? Is that what they called it?
Yes, that was the cause of death. And she was about 17 years old at the time. She was planning on attending Queensborough College in the fall. She had her whole life ahead of her.
So she was basically a senior in high school.
She had just graduated from high school.
Just graduated, right.
During high school, starting when she was 14 years old, she worked at Creative Day Camp with children. She had her whole life ahead of her.
Do you know what she aspired to be?
I'm not sure what she aspired to be. I asked a source what she wanted to do. And there wasn't a definitive answer given. I know that she really liked to draw and that she was artistic and she was creative. Maybe she wanted to pursue some type of art degree. I don't know. But, when you're 17 years old, everything's kind of up in the air, and you don't, plans change, and you never know what you're going to major in.
In 1974, she was looking to go to Queens College or Queensborough College. Do you know which one?
Queensborough College.
Okay, yeah, Queensborough, even to this day, is it's a good school. It's a community school, basically. Okay, and it's close to that area that this happened.
Yes. She was abducted somewhere around John Bowen High School. And then her body was found, about 4 miles away. They aren't exactly sure why the location was chosen.
Okay. How does this tie in with any of the Son of Sam murders, or does it?
The way it ties in, first of all, now the sources disagree, thinking that David Berkowitz, I want to be clear, have anything to do with this case, or anything remotely with the Sons of Sam case could have to do with Leslie Zaret. I have to agree on some levels based on the profile of the main suspect. The main suspect was a friend of the family of Leslie Zaret's. Their parents were friends. He was in the house frequently. He graduated about 3 years before Leslie Zaret's. He was Jewish. He was adopted. He had a fake FBI ID. He had an LSD problem, and he owned a gun, and that's the exact same psychological profile as David Berkowitz. That's kind of weird. Now, in Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil, a couple women had gone to Veronica Lucan following David Berkowitz's arrest, right, and stated that David had seen or witnessed a woman being murdered, and that a hairbrush was used on her, and she was referred to as JJ. Now, that seems to point to Leslie Zaret. The comb was not, or the comb of the hairbrush was not made public at the time. It wasn't made public until years later.
Were these people that came to Maury Terry?
They didn't come to Maury Terry. They went to Veronica Lucan.
Veronica, excuse me. They went to Veronica.
Credibility issues, and you know more about Veronica Lucan than I do, so maybe you want to take over on that one.
Yeah. Well, what I know about Veronica Lucan is more of what happened later on. She was she lived in the Bayside area of Queens. I know she did psychic readings and things like that stuff, but she also supposedly had religious visions of the Virgin Mary. There's a series of books. I read a couple of them years ago. I had heard about this because I lived in Queens most of my life.
What's her name again? What was her last name?
Veronica Lucan, Leuken, Lucan. Okay. And she went to, I believe it was St. Michael's Catholic Church in Queens, and she started to have a following. This is after Zaret. This is what I know of her. Very religious woman. She believed that she was having visions of the Virgin Mary in Flushing Meadows Park and a few other places. And there was a series of books written about this. Kind of like her diaries and other things in the book. And for a long time, I can remember out of St. Michael's, at least going into the early 2000s, there would be these people that still followed her visions, and they would meet in Flushing Meadows Park. Flushing Meadows Park is opposite from where the Mets play. Okay, Citi Field, before that Shea Stadium. It's a big park in Queens where a lot of people, there's a lot of soccer fields, a lot of stuff going on. There's Queens Museum, there's an ice skating rink. It's a big park. They had the World's Fair there in 1964. I can remember hearing things going into the early 2000s at least, where people were still following her. So I don't know. I mean, I read the books. There was a couple of the books. I didn't read them all, but they were interesting. But let me ask you, Chris, getting back to this.
That's one. Let me, because that just that just like blew my mind. So when Leslie was found, I'm sorry, I missed this. Was it the family that went into this Veronica lady? What they were looking for? for her to solve
No,
the case?
there were two witnesses
Okay.
or two women that say that David Berkowitz witnessed a woman being murdered,
Right,
which
right.
a hairbrush was used on her.
Is Leslie.
That Veronica Lucan kept placing phone calls to somebody that Maury Terry worked with, Dunleavy, on the case. And Dunleavy told Maury Terry, he's like, this woman keeps calling. She's driving me
Dunleavy, you're talking about
crazy. I
Steve
don't know who
Dunleavy?
she is. Maury Terry tracked her down, and he questioned her, and that's when she said that two women had seen it, or not. I'm sorry, correcting myself. David Berkowitz had witnessed it. These women knew about it, and Veronica Lucan was actually housing one of these women at some point in time. She one of them lived with her, but there was so much I mean, it almost comes across like a riddle. I mean, she was referred to as JJ. That's not Leslie Zaret's name. They said that she drove a station wagon and that it was burned, and that it was used at the Moskowitz crime scene and it was burned. It was also said that JJ's body was chopped up and left in Little Neck Bay, and there was nothing that could be found that any bodies were chopped up and left in Little Neck Bay. It just seems like there was a lot of symbolism used to try to get down to who it was, because they couldn't be possibly direct with the victim's name. That's my opinion.
So
these hold on, these two women, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
were associated with David Berkowitz in some way.
I'm going to assume so, yes.
All right. Now, obviously prior to him being arrested.
Yes.
Okay, so it could have been during the Son of Sam spree that they knew him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to assume that at least, or even though 74 was 2 years before, I guess it's possible they knew him before all that happened. But so they go to Veronica Lucan with this information.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ever able to figure out why they went to her?
I really don't know why they went to her. I mean, I know Hank Chinati,
yes,
worked with Maury Terry. He
was close with Veronica Lucan too.
Yes, he was also in touch with Veronica Lucan. I really don't know. I can't explain that.
Okay.
This is wild to me. So let me get this straight. So you have this Veronica Lucan who is devoutly religious, obviously believes she has some psychic powers. I don't know if she does or not. These two women come forward to her to say, hey, we were running around with Berkowitz. Potentially, in my assumption, that would mean the cult that was in Untermeyer Park. They come to unload their conscience to Veronica, and then she calls Maury Terry. I mean, and my thing too is, do we know did Veronica, just from my research I've done, was she safe to these girls? Did she work with whistleblowers coming out of, like, I don't know. This is just wild. This brings a whole new.
I don't think she worked with whistleblowers, Bryce. I think that maybe that the women just felt comfortable coming to her, and she had made a comment to Maury Terry that people felt comfortable telling her things. And I think it's possible because of her association with the Catholic Church, although they tried to disassociate with her based on her claiming to be a psychic, and she was essentially kind of a carnival barker, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I obviously her visions, I believe they came later. I don't remember it being in the 70s. I remember it being more in the 80s, but I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I've
she passed away in 1995. I just looked. Now, so was
what year, Bryce? I'm sorry.
She passed away in 1995. Veronica did. Now, is this so? Was this the first time anybody had kind of connected the possibility of Leslie's passing associated with the Son of Sam cult? Was this the first time?
I mean, her name was never used at the time, so I mean, all you can do is just loosely associate it. For example, if you go into a document that was given to Santucci by Maury Terry whenever they reopened up the investigation into the Son of Sam crimes in late 79,
79.
there is a reference to a Janus who David Berkowitz says the cult killed in 1975, August, and that her body was left in a schoolyard near Oakland Lake. Now, the year is wrong, but that also fits Leslie Zaret. Now, the name Janus is wrong, but I also think that that was given symbolically. I can't say necessarily by David Berkowitz if he was supplied information.
Isn't it possible, Chris,
I don't know what to make of it.
Isn't it possible that, you know, people that David may have met in the cult didn't give their real names?
I think that's pretty well known that they didn't give their real names. And
she might have been known. She might have, you know, he might have met somebody or heard about someone that was known by the name of Janice, but wasn't really Janice.
And arguably, like in this instance of the Arliss Perry case, he was told information. And I mean, he could have been told information on Leslie Zaret as well and not given her real name and given an incorrect year, or he could have messed up the year. I don't know. I don't speak on behalf of David Berkowitz.
But it's like a very similar thing that you'd have to go, that's very close.
Yes, I mean, I will clearly say that David Berkowitz and I write each other. We've written to each other for almost 3 years. I've questioned him about Leslie Zaret, and he says he had never heard of the case before. So, I mean, he's obviously in maximum security. There are risks with him talking.
Yeah. There's also the possibility too, and I don't know much about this because there's a lot of, sometimes in the occult they'll speak in like gematria.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll use code names with number recognition patterns that will mean the same thing. Like, and I was just kind of trying to look around to see the Janice to Leslie Zaret if there was any type of gematria, and there's different forms of gematria that people use. So it could be, if it is something, and I don't know, this is just speculation, guys. I don't know, but that could be another tie-in too.
The way I analyzed it is through events analysis, because I keep finding that there are date tie-ins and terrorist groups and people in different religious organizations. They have a tendency, whenever they're engaged in nefarious activities, to use symbolism, and that can include dates and anniversaries and birthdays and other things that have occult significance. So the first thing that I noticed with Janus, for instance, is you can convert it to the god Janus, Janus. And then Portunus is the Roman duplicate of Janus. And the holiday celebration for Portunus is August 17th. And that's the date Leslie Zaret was likely murdered and found. So that is my opinion why the name Janus was given. Now, can I say that David Berkowitz chose it for those reasons? No, I can't say that. I'm expressing my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't know what to make of it. I'll be honest. I 100% do not believe David Berkowitz had anything to do with Leslie Zaret's death. At worst, he witnessed it. The prime suspect is the most likely person who murdered her.
So let me ask you this, Chris. You're saying that it was the friend of the family that may have done this.
Yes.
What information do you have? What did the police have? I know the FBI got involved in this case too. What did they have that showed that?
Well, just as a background, the specific person had somebody a couple weeks before Leslie. He met this woman at Club 82, which was a mafia-owned drag club.
That was in the East Village on St. Mark's Place.
Yeah, and he talked her into giving a ride home. He didn't take her home. He took her to a park where he proceeded to assault her. He couldn't achieve an erection. He flipped her over. He used a comb and he sodomized her with it. And he tried to strangle her, and she kneed him, and she got away. She was too embarrassed for years to talk about being sodomized with the comb, and did not relay that to law enforcement until decades later. So they had no idea.
Right.
And then a couple weeks later, this happened to Leslie Zaret. Now, it's not exactly the same profile. The other was sexual. According to the source, the Leslie was not. The comb was inserted post-mortem, and she was relayed this information by the FBI and the NYPD.
Okay. So, all right, that's interesting. But this guy, friend of the family, sexually this girl from Club 82, and basically got away with it because the girl didn't press charges.
She did. He went to jail for that. She did press charges. She just didn't relay specifically that a comb was used on her.
So you think it's likely that this person who sexually this girl before he was charged with her, he murdered Leslie.
He murdered Leslie 2 weeks following this woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the timeline. Okay, just trying to make it clear.
Now, Leslie was strangled, correct? So she was not assaulted while she was alive. So did this other girl, did he try to I mean, was there any bruises on her neck? Or, I mean, I understand, listen, as the ladies out there, like, I totally get why you would want to keep some of that private. I understand that. Yeah. It's even though you should not be ashamed because it was not your fault, I could understand that 100%. But were there other similarities? Like, does this girl feel like she got away? Like, was Leslie perhaps an accidental kill? I
don't know. I don't know. I will say that the prime suspect tried to flee to California following her murder, and then changed his mind. He had bought an airplane tickets, which is interesting if you look at the FBI FOIA that I was provided. They had turned over the case to California at one point.
Did they think he was there?
Suspects.
Did they think he was in California, Chris? Or
I don't know. They did a VICAP analysis, and for people that aren't familiar with VICAP, it's Violent Apprehension Program. They deal with serial crimes. They deal with sexual crimes such as unsolved homicides, missing persons, unidentified persons. VICAP will go through and find things that are similar and pair things up. And apparently they must have thought that some of the profiling of the case matched people that were out in California. Now, my personal opinion is I know that Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, was active in New York. He moved to California. He acted in concert with a relative of his, Bueno. And my guess is it might have gotten turned over to California because of Bianchi. It could line up for that reason.
I never knew that.
That's just me guessing, and I'm not saying I think Bianchi did it, but
yeah. I never knew there was a connection with New York with the Hillside Strangler.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he resided in New York before, and he was a suspect in the Alphabet murders in upstate New York, which is interesting because Maury Terry also thought the Alphabet murders tied in with the Sons of Sam.
That's true. That's true. I never made that connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's also, I mean, another interesting thing to note. I'm not saying that the main suspect is associated with the people that David Berkowitz was associated with, but it's also been said by numerous people, including John Comparetto, that people that were involved in with the cults were relocating to California. So that's something else that you have to take into consideration, because the prime suspect tried to flee to California. I mean, that's an interesting choice to.
Yeah, it is. It is an interesting. I mean, there's a lot of cult activity in California. We know that.
Yes.
Now, just so people know, who is John Comparetto again?
John Comparetto is a friend of David Berkowitz's, dating back to high school, and they did volunteer work with each other through the fire department. Right. And he's a prior NYPD employee. Right.
Okay. Wow. But again, very kind of loose, very loose connections here. David to this day says he doesn't know about the Leslie Zaret case, but yet you had these two people that came forward to Lucan saying that he heard about something with the comb. Now, could he have been referring to the first case, the one the where the girl got away? That was actually a comb.
Well, she wasn't murdered.
No.
So
okay, right.
Was murdered. So there's that.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think of this, Bryce?
I was just looking at the Alphabet murders, and I kind of want to do a deep dive into those too, because those just looking. What gets me is, and I know there's a lot of missing pieces. Like we're making a lot of speculation, which I think our audience knows that. And I think you're right. Criminal Justice Chris, I think it's Occam's razor, right? The most likely suspect is probably the suspect. What most likely happened is probably what happened. But I can't help, and I don't want to get too conspiracy minded, because sometimes I think when we get too conspiracy minded, we go too far with it. But there just seems to be an awful lot of occultism happening with all of these cases. And
it's really, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's kind of doing my head in a little bit, in a good way, because my thing is, like, I feel like if Leslie were my sister or my friend or me, I would want the absolute truth to come out over what happened. I think that's part of honoring the lives of the victims of any cases. And I think that's why the Son of Sam case, a lot of the relatives of the victims want the truth out, because that honors honoring how they passed is also honoring them. And, I mean, the 70s, I mean, I was born in 1983. I missed the 70s, but part of me is like, what a wild ride the 70s were. I mean, we still have stuff like that going on today, but in the fact, I didn't know that the Hillsides were also, like you, Mike, I didn't know that he had it's just there's just so much we don't know. And I think that's what's frustrating with a lot of cases, is the unknown, because speculation can only take you so far, right? So, and I feel bad for Leslie. Like, as a young girl, like, my heart breaks. Even like the victims of the Son of Sam, the first girls that were coming home from a nightclub, and in that car they were just gossiping about boys, and to have their life, and like for Leslie, like she had her whole life in front of her, and to have that just taken so callously, and to have something inserted into you as a woman, especially after your dad, like, that is just so unbelievably disrespectful. And my heart breaks for her. And nobody's been charged in this case, correct?
Nope. No, nobody's been charged in the case. The main suspect, as well as other suspects, have been brought in for questioning, but the main suspect has been brought in numerous times. Leslie Zaret was exhumed for DNA several years ago. 3 of the suspects were excluded. The main suspect, I do not believe was excluded, but it's inconclusive, so he can't be convicted for it. But I know that the NYPD tends to believe that he's the person that's culpable for it.
Okay, let's talk about him for 1 second here. You said that he was eventually arrested for the sexual assault, the first case.
Yes.
Okay, where the girl got away. He did time for that.
Yes.
Do you know how much time he did?
I'm not exactly sure how much time he did. I think he did at least a couple years.
And when
he's a registered sex offender at this point.
Understood. When did he get arrested for that, and approximately when did he do the time? What years?
It was soon after. I believe he was arrested for it in 1974.
Okay. So during the Son of Sam spree, it's pretty clear he was in jail at the time.
He could have been out of jail. I can't speak to his jail record because I don't know his full name. I know what his first name is. I haven't pulled an FOIA on him. So
okay.
yeah, I can't speak to his full prison record. And even if I were to have his full name and if I wanted to access it, it's not going to be available through lower courts, typically through a court docket. That's usually it's only available through appellate.
I see. Okay. Now, what else did you, when you did a FOIA request, what else turned up? Anything interesting? Anything else?
Well, there's 4 suspects. One is Leslie's ex-boyfriend, and I'm probably going to slaughter his name, Kenny Kapitofsky. Another suspect is Ronnie Kroll, Krowl. This is an ex-boyfriend of somebody that Leslie was close to. Ronnie had a relative that was fairly high up in the Queens precinct. Apparently, he was dealing drugs and he knew tough people, according to the source. He was a Marine. He was a Marine, and he had a drug problem. He ended up dying of a drug problem. So did Leslie's ex.
So the two suspects
the source doesn't think that Ronnie Kroll did it. I mean, obviously, he can't be completely eliminated. I asked the source if Ronnie and the main suspect knew one another, and the source said no. I can't be absolutely certain that they didn't know one another. The FBI did tell one source that multiple people laid out Leslie's body, so multiple people were involved.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, and that's a very interesting point, because there are people that are trying to implicate David Berkowitz with this murder.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular implication, they know, the FBI knows that this body was moved, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's going to take more than one person to do that. It's safe to assume.
Just quickly, what they believe is that the prime suspect switched out vehicles, and they think that he switched out a vehicle with his father and used his father's vehicle. And he was also ticketed the night of Leslie's murder, and they believe that he obtained the ticket in order to alibi himself. This is a little extra background.
Okay, so he how would you do that? Would you put your car in a spot where you could get a ticket and switch it out and take a different car?
I don't know. I mean,
it seems like
it's not the first time in this case where we've seen tickets popping up. around
Of
crime
course, David
scenes.
Berkowitz getting caught with the ticket. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, he got ticketed at the Moskowitz crime scene several blocks away. There was another suspect that I believe was ticketed in the vicinity the same night of another crime scene. You'd have to refresh my memory on what crime scene that was, though.
Well, getting back to this though, is what evidence is there that there may have been, someone to help him move the body? Okay, because that implies a conspiracy right there. Two people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which if it was David Berkowitz, highly unlikely, but that would imply that he's got help, which really kind of throws a curveball at the whole lone gunman theory that some people still like to put out there, even though I think it's been debunked for 45 years. That's just my opinion based on a lot of evidence that we've seen over years. But that's the problem with that. That would mean that there's more people involved. Am I right?
Well, there seems to be a myth out there that serial killers can't work together, and that's not accurate.
Yeah, it's not.
Bianchi is a prime example.
So here's my question. I just looked it up. I found the New York Times article from when she was found, because I wanted to see how big she was. She was only 5'1", and she only weighed 100. She was tiny.
Yes.
Now, forgive me because I've never actually had to carry a dead body. Does body weight, we talk about like dead weight. Does body weight change when a person is deceased?
It's dead weight. Okay.
So how much heavier would she have been? I don't have experience with this, so how much heavier because that is a tiny 5'1", 105 pounds. She was itty bitty.
Let's put it this way: when somebody is dead, that's why they call it dead weight. All right. You're obviously getting no help from the deceased, so you got to carry the whole weight yourself. I'll be honest with you, even 100-pound person, to move it yourself, an average man, okay, you're gonna have a problem, all right, because it's like a sack of rocks.
Right. I mean, I've had my nephews and nieces have dead weighted me when they were toddlers because they didn't want to leave the park, but that's very different than a dead body. So,
the amount doesn't change. It's just that the weight is
carried.
Right. It hangs down, and it's if somebody's alive and you could pick them up, go behind them and pick them up 200 pounds, you could do that.
They'll hold their own.
You get around with your friends or something, you pick them up from behind. Try carrying them. Maybe you've had a friend that was unconscious and you had to put him to bed. Okay, very similar. Okay, maybe they had a little too much to drink and you put him to bed. That's hard to do. Okay.
So with this, if let's say it was the prime suspect. Now, question: is he still alive?
Good question.
As far as I know, yes, he is married and has a family.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we won't say his name just in case in our justice.
No, and he actually tried to reach out to somebody close to Leslie several years ago, which is disconcerting. Despite being married, he reached out to this person through a dating app called Plenty of Fish.
Yep.
And he gave the wrong astrological sign. He is a Taurus, and he put on the profile that he's a Capricorn, which is kind of odd. I mean, it's a goat. And he cribbed a couple Jimi Hendrix songs and said that, or cribbed one Jimi Hendrix song and claimed it was his. The source figured out it was a Jimi Hendrix song. The source cannot remember which Jimi Hendrix song it is. I question if it could have been The Stars That Play with Laughing Sam's Dice, or possibly When 6 Was 9. You'd have to read one of my blogs to understand When 6 Was 9, more related to the Sons of Sam symbol. The source could not remember, but the source reported it to the NYPD, and the NYPD blew her off. And that's not okay.
No.
He's a
So,
prior sexual offender and is a prime suspect for Leslie's murder. And for them to just shrug their shoulders and not take that seriously is appalling.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just, so Mike, so if we've got at least, you said what, like at least 4 people might have helped move the body? Was that the number?
No, not four. There are four main suspects. I believe
Oh, okay.
multiple
Okay.
people moved the body, minimum 2.
So it could have been like this guy's dad that helped him. Because, then you wonder, like, that no one else is cracked. Has anybody come forward with any? And I was looking, Leslie, because I know I saw that in your blog with the Son of Sam. I've been looking through it, trying to find it, the emblem of the Son of Sam. But so no one has cracked, right? To come forward. Has anybody else come forward to say, "Hey, I was with him," or I know?
Apparently, according to one source, somebody stated they wanted to go to Leslie's mother and say what happened to Leslie, but they, in quotation marks, were afraid their family was going to be hurt. Let me rephrase. They were afraid that they were going to hurt their family, meaning more than one person was involved with Leslie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They were afraid they were going to hurt their own family or the Zaret family?
Their own family.
Okay.
I don't know who the person was that wanted to go to Leslie's mother. I didn't ask further because I just don't think it's prudent.
Right.
So,
Now I'm assuming that Leslie's mother is no longer living.
as far as I know, both parents are deceased.
Right. Bless their hearts, man, to go to your grave not knowing what happened to your child. That's hard. I'm so sorry.
That's horrible.
Heartbreaking. And shame on the police department. I mean, I don't want to say shame on, I mean, I know that they're working really hard and they're only working with what they have, but it just seems like there was a lot of negligence in this case.
They've lost evidence too, Bryce. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's go into the evidence that they've lost. They've lost Leslie's clothes, which obviously could have been used to find evidence on.
Right, DNA testing. Yeah.
There could have been hair. There could have been all sorts of things on those clothes, but the clothes were lost. Leslie's yearbook was lent out to the NYPD in order for them to create a working list of suspects, because that's what yearbooks are used for. They lost the yearbook. And I mean, that's something that is important to survivors, to have memories of the person that they lost. And the NYPD couldn't even effectively manage keeping the yearbook safe and getting it back to the person that loaned it out. A plastic poinsettia was left on Leslie's grave over Christmas time. Nobody was watching the grave sites. They don't know how it was found. It was unmarked. It could have been somebody that was attending the funeral. It could have been somebody that had inside information from the NYPD. There's all sorts of different scenarios for locating Leslie's grave, but it's suspect how it was found. And she was Jewish, and leaving a poinsettia, that's traditionally a Christmas gift.
Yeah, that's very much a Christmas Christian.
And that poinsettia, it's unknown if it was, dusted for latent fingerprints. Who knows if they had somebody sitting outside and watching that gravesite, they could have collected it at least fairly quickly. You don't know if it snowed and it washed away the latent fingerprints or what, but that was evidence.
And when was this poinsettia left at her grave?
Over Christmas time, 1974.
Okay, so the first Christmas after her passing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's so much you could have done. Like, I don't, of course, I'm not familiar with this part of New York, but what, like, even seeing where they would sell plastic poinsettias. Like, my mother is a huge fan of poinsettias, so we do a lot of poinsettias at Christmas time. I've never seen a plastic one, so I
have. What they do is at cemeteries, at least up here, Okay, there's always a flower store. There's always a place to get the headstones, usually within a block or two of the cemetery in the general vicinity. You can get plastic flowers, you can get real flowers, whatever, to put at the site. People put plastic at the grave because you don't have to take care of it. It just stays there. It's not going to go away.
Right.
That's why they use plastic. But you can usually up here. I don't know where Leslie's grave is. Do you, Christina?
I think it's, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, it's at Mount Hebron Cemetery. Don't quote me on that.
Mount Hebron.
I'd be wrong.
I'm thinking, is that Brooklyn or Queens?
I
I'm
don't
not
know
sure.
New
I
York.
have to look that up. I could be wrong. But usually next to the cemeteries, you're going to have a flower place like that.
I just did a quick Google search, just quick. I said poinsettia symbolism occult. The Aztecs. Now I'm gonna have to look more into this, but this just kind of like stopped my heart. Um, this flower symbolizes purity and the need for sacrifice.
Really?
Do you know anything about what is the poinsettia? There's rituals. I mean, this is, guys, this is just me doing a quick Google search, so please don't take this as fact. This is just me doing a quick, I would have to look more into this because I know that there is symbolism behind the Christian view of poinsettias, but I wanted to look at the occult view. Um, it's the mortal flower. There are different rituals around the poinsettia. That just like it's sacrifice though. It's the main is the main.
Did you guys know that a poinsettia is poisonous to cats?
No, did not know that.
Yep. If you have a cat, you should never have a real poinsettia in the house because if they take a bite of the leaf, they could die. I had a cat many years ago that got a bite of it, and he slept for about 3 days and nonstop. He didn't die, but the vet told me he was lucky because he could have. And I have cats. I always make sure that no one brings a poinsettia in the house.
Oh man, yeah, this is yeah, I'm on Reddit now. There's a lot of different they use poinsettias to try to cleanse something.
I didn't know that.
So I don't know. I don't know if that I'm not, that just might be it just might be a coincidence. I don't know. Like I said, guys, I'm just Googling it right now. Don't take that as fact, but that like stopped my heart when I saw that. So I don't know if someone was trying to make a mockery of her or if it was a symbolism for I don't know. I don't know. But
it's an interesting, event to have happen related to her.
yeah, I know because every flower has a meaning. I know that for magical. I mean, I just looked at magical uses for poinsettias on Reddit. I know some people say poinsettia, guys. I know we're gonna get those comments, but down here in the South, and I love obviously in the North too, we say poinsettia.
Arguably, serial killers are very much into symbolism too. And I believe I had watched something years ago where they had discussed surveys that they had given serial killers and asked them what they wanted to be growing up, and a good portion of them had said that they wanted to be florists.
They wanted to be florists?
Florist, like a FLORIST. I mean, this is something that I saw like a really, really long time ago. It would be maybe in the 80s.
Wow.
So I can't give a source at this point, but yeah, serial killers were surveyed to psychologically profile them, and a lot of them said they wanted to be florists. So yeah, Bryce is right. There's a lot of symbolism behind flowers.
And that's just, I mean, like I said, for a Jewish girl to get a poinsettia, I mean, if I were to pass away and someone would have put a poinsettia on my grave, I wouldn't, because I come from a Presbyterian family, so that would not. My parents put poinsettias on their parents' graves every Christmas. That's not nefarious for my culture or our culture, I would say. I think you guys are the same. But for a Jewish girl to get a poinsettia, that is kind of a slap across the face. But then also looking deeper, there does seem to be some other, I don't know. It's just And something that's plastic isn't going to ever die. It's just always going to be there. So I don't know. I'm assuming it's been moved since then because that was over, that was in the 70s. But how did you know how her loved ones took that when they found that poinsettia? I'm assuming it was her loved ones who found it.
I'm not sure who found the poinsettia. It might have been somebody. It might have been somebody from the cemetery who was an employee, and then I believe it was turned over for evidence to the NYPD.
Well, good for that cemetery employee for having the wherewithal to do what the cops weren't doing and to know that who this was and to turn it over. So,
but arguably now, and I don't know if you're aware of this because you live down south, but the Brooklyn evidence warehouse caught on fire on December 13th, I believe, 2022. And
might have been a little might have been a little before that. I'm thinking 20 or 21, but that's in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. It was a whole warehouse.
I promise you, it was 2022 because my friend texted me whenever she saw that it was on fire.
Okay. I remember it happened when we were doing the Son of Sam Chronicles, but I thought it might have been a little earlier. But you're right, and who knows what kind of evidence was lost in that fire? I mean, the whole warehouse was destroyed.
That's where they stored a lot of cold cases, and I would imagine that a lot of the evidence related to Leslie Zaret was stored there. And
I've had discussions with people at the FOIA division, and they do say that a lot of stuff was lost.
Yeah, apparently they were able to save a few things that are in barrels, but I don't have any confidence that there's going to be anything related to Leslie Zaret that's there.
And it's a shame
apparently, also the NYPD at one point used a psychic in the case, and the psychic also does astrology readings. She went to the same high school as Leslie Zaret, so she probably knew some inside information related to some of the people that went to the high school. But in order to get some more information on the case, one source actually placed a call to this person.
Which person?
The psychic that the NYPD was using, and this woman charged like $3.99 a minute and gave her an astrology reading and also information on the case, which I think is appalling. I mean, I don't even know what to say on that. The NYPD couldn't take Veronica Lucan seriously, but who was a psychic, but then they use another psychic, and she has more information on the case than the source had. Yikes, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I have a friend who could pull Leslie's chart if her family wanted her to do that, and might give some indication as to what the end of her life looked like. But yeah, that's appalling. And my friend who does it would absolutely, for this situation, would not charge at all. She would just do it.
I don't think that was the purpose of the phone call. I think the purpose of the phone call, the source, was just getting an astrology reading for herself, and then also collecting more information on the case because she felt like it was needed, and she found out that this person was working with the NYPD.
What was Leslie's? What was her astrological sign?
I believe she was. Is she on the cusp of Virgo or Libra? September 22nd, which is odd because that's also the holiday for Mabon.
That's the next sign after Virgo. Whatever's after Virgo, that's what that is.
It would be
Mabon would also make her an attractive victim because that's a Celtic holiday.
That's why I asked if there was any correlation between her birth.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different things that make her an attractive victim, including if you anagram her name out, it anagrams out. If you take the Z and convert it to a WS, it sounds like a Z. So it basically reads waters, and water is significant in the occults.
Yeah. Do we know what her moon and rising sign were? Because that could also, I don't know if that would be a very detailed to know her moon and rising sign.
That's a good question. I'm certifying in astrology myself. I haven't finished it yet because I plan on charting a lot of things out. I think that there's probably a pattern.
Yeah, because I know that, like, for me, like, you know, for those who don't know, you have your astrological sign that you're born under, then you have a moon sign. So, like, I'm an Aquarius with a moon Scorpio and a rising Leo. And so that gives you more indications of, like, the how a person perceives their life, but it can also, if we're looking at occult activities, this also is, we were offline, we were talking about blood types as well. This also makes up an ingredient of what potentially, if again, big emphasis on if this has anything to do with the occult, this could give more explanation as to why perhaps she was chosen. I hate to say it that way. Again, we don't know. It could have just been an attack gone wrong, you know, by the prime suspect.
The biggest red flag to me is the first Sons of Sam letter, where there is a paraphrase: "The women of Queens are the prettiest of all. I must be the water."
Z prettiest, like a, you know, instead of the prettiest, saying Z prettiest of all, like a German accent or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a water indication that sounds close to her name. And as well, it's a paraphrase from Snow White. I mean, it's the mirrors responding to the queen. And if you look at the story for Snow White, not many people know this because it's not in the movies, but the queen tries to kill Snow White 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Tries to kill her with a girdle. She tries to kill her with a poison comb, and she tries to kill her with an apple. A comb was used on Leslie Zaret. So the symbolism is there again. It's circumstantial. I mean, certainly you could argue, if you want to definitively argue that David Berkowitz wrote those letters himself, you're going to have to wonder how he got that information.
Right. Well, my question,
I personally don't believe he wrote the letters himself. The NYPD and the FBI couldn't conclusively say he wrote the letters himself. And anybody who tries to say, "Oh, he wrote the letters," well, you're not an expert.
Well, they did send the letters to the FBI, and they looked for fingerprints, and it came back inconclusive.
You're correct.
Right.
Well, if we look at her, so we talk about water too, and that this is just for informational for people who might be wondering. That's why I asked about the moon sign, because the moon sign of a person is their emotional state. So, like, I'm a Scorpio moon, so I'm a water moon sign. So that means that I cry a lot, that I'm very emotional, I'm an overthinker. Now, when if we're looking at magic and energy, the internal state of a person, their reactionary responses, gives off a particular energy. So if her moon sign is a water, she's going to be and I hate to say it this way, guys, and forgive me, she's going to be juicier in a sense of what she releases when she's put into a situation where her emotions are heightened. For example, my boyfriend is also an air sign. He's Gemini, but his moon sign is Virgo. So he's very grounded. I'm the emotional one. And so he would not be a juicy person to, like, trigger, right? Because he's not going to respond in the way of a moon sign Scorpio or Pisces or Cancer, Scorpio being the most. That's why I was curious, I know a lot of my audience knows this because we've been on this journey together for 5 years where we've been uncovering this stuff. If this is an occult ritual that's been done, every single detail of this ritual was planned out to a T. So they're going to know all these things. They're going to do it on specific dates, and they're going to look for the right victim that's going to give off, because when that happens, especially in like an Luciferian type of situation where you are spilling blood, you're inheriting that energy then. So you're creating that, not us. Please guys, don't ever get involved in this stuff. Like, this is not good. Like, this is not something, I mean, of course everyone's got their own free will, but this is not the side of light. We don't want to do this, and we don't want to take from something else. But that's also why a lot of times they do younger children, which Leslie was at that strange age, right? Where she wasn't really an adult, but she wasn't really a child anymore. She was kind of at that weird middle transitional part, but they use children and animals a lot because of the innocence. That innocence, there's more nectar to that innocence versus that's the good thing about getting old. You get old and jaded. No one wants to sacrifice you anymore because you're old and jaded. But you know, so it's just fascinating. And you know, and one of the boards that we follow, the Cassiopeians, they always say knowledge is power, knowledge protects, and knowledge is infinite. So the more you know these things, the more you can spot these things and protect yourself from these nefarious people. You know, so that's why I asked about her moon sign, because that would give a huge indication of what energy, how she, even though everybody, no matter what your moon sign is going to freak out if that's happening to them. But the level of vibration of energy that's going to come off of her when she's in a stressful situation is really going to show through the moon sign. So anyway, that's just, it's
and that's an interesting analysis, Bryce, because, you know, what I've always said, and I know you would agree, is that the cult behind the Son of Sam, okay, they wanted to have the city in fear, and fear is a very strong emotion, okay, yeah. And you know, if you were going to pick people, if you had the knowledge, the ability to pick the right kind of people, and not be random, but if you knew the person, you knew their air sign, you knew their sign, and what would give out the most emotion, you might, you know, harm that person to create the most power. All right. And that's something that was behind the Son of Sam cult. I have no doubt of that.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, was this part of it, or was it something parallel? Okay. You know, it's funny. The more I think about this, it's like when we were talking about the Wendy Savino case, all right, which I think we pretty much showed was not David Berkowitz,
right,
okay, in a lot of different ways. I think this is even less likely to be David Berkowitz. All right. You know, maybe he had knowledge of it, which if you go down that path,
yeah,
okay, so then you say, then you're looking at a cult.
I don't think David Berkowitz did this. If the cult is involved, and if the main, I mean, there is a possibility. Do we know that, Chris, was the main suspect ever located in like Untermeyer Park, or was he ever known to hang out with any of the people, the characters that?
Not that I'm aware of, and the source that I talked to would know if he was in contact with David Berkowitz. And I mentioned a few other people's names, and these people's names did not sound familiar to the source. I mean, you have to question how the symbolism made it into the first letter, and there's a lot of other things I'm not discussing because I don't want to promote criminal versatility, and the FBI and the NYPD adds, you know, probably like 8 pages of my analysis. And it's the reason why I got the FOIA release from the FBI, because I'm presuming that the NYPD never filled them in, that the main suspect had a fake FBI ID, which is a problem.
Yeah, that just made my skin crawl when you said, that just makes like, when the thing too, it's like, so I don't think that Berkowitz actually committed the kill in this case, but if he knew about it, it would indicate to me that the cult was involved in this. But yeah, of course, we don't know. There's so many unanswered questions, and it could just be, it literally, typically I'm not somebody that believes in coincidences, but it literally could just be that all of these things that connect to the occult might just be a coincidence. And it could have just been a bad night that went awry with some pervert, you know, that's obviously got a propensity to do, I don't know, you know, I mean, this guy sounds super weird. The one that's the main suspect, from what you've told, he seems like a real winner, you know, with, you know, you got to go on Plenty of Fish to catfish people with some, you know.
Yeah, but 50 years later. But here's the thing too, is you know, if David Berkowitz knew about this and spoke of it to these 2 people that went to Veronica Lukin, that implies right there that there is a network of this occultism. David was in Yonkers. David was based out of the Bronx and Yonkers, basically. Okay. And how would he know what's going on in Queens unless this occult activity has connections with each other all over the place, which I would think it would.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's another
You
thing.
know,
I think this is a bigger network than we
Yeah.
even realize.
yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
I
think it's,
mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
the source that I talked to doesn't seem to think that the prime suspect was associated with these people, but obviously the source can't be absolutely 100% positive because this person would not have been with him 24 hours a day. And who really goes around bragging and saying, hey, I'm associated with so and so and so and so,
Yeah,
and this,
yeah.
um,
And I
That's
will
but
say,
I respect the source's opinion that she thinks that this person was likely the culprit. I would say based on his profile, and it weirdly matching David Berkowitz's, that it was him. But then you have to question, well, how did these two women and David Berkowitz know this enough information? I mean, he's not talking about it at this point, and he says he's never heard of the Leslie Zaret case. But like I said, he's in maximum security, and it would probably work to his benefit not to discuss it because that's frowned upon. It can cause problems for inmates whenever you start discussing your criminal activity with others because you're viewed as a snitch.
and I will say too, from what I have learned from these people who are deep in the occult, and I know with the Untermeyer Park situation, we were looking at a range of people from hoodlums on the street just trying to find family to people whose whole family units are ingrained in this type of religious belief. And I'm not doubting your source's opinion, like I get, but one thing I will say is from what I've learned working with whistleblowers who grow up in these types of families where they are doing blood rituals a lot as kids, where they are being trained in these dark arts, is that you are as a practicing member born into this, you are trained to not reveal any of this and to your outside. So you will have kids in school that look like they come from perfectly normal families where there's no mention, and then at home they're doing these rituals. And so the kids are thoroughly almost, I don't want to use MK Ultra. I don't know. They're just thoroughly like terrified into not speaking about this in the outside world. And I would really encourage you guys to listen. I mean, I was not raised in that, so I can't speak on what that's like for these, but that seems to be a very common thread amongst these people who participate in these religious practices, where a lot of their closest friends will never know that they are involved in this because they keep it so, and in a lot of ways too, with these, what I've learned from these religious groups is that they also view themselves as being highly special. And so they're taught that they are the special ones. And so they can't, so this beautiful secret, this sacred secret that you have. And so there is that little opening with what your source was saying where he or she might not be aware because they weren't supposed to be aware, right? Because that's how that religion works. It's not open like you go to church every Sunday, like you're open about it. They're not open about it. And a lot of them do go to church every Sunday too, but they just don't, because they have a facade that they carry. And I know it sounds wild, but listening to the whistleblowers talk about it, we have a whole, I can actually, you guys, if you're new to this, I will put a link down. Actually, Mike participated in it. We did a whole roundtable full of people who grew up in these families. And Mike participated with his research actually into the Son of Sam. And so I will link that down below, guys. If you want to link over to this roundtable event and listen to all these people talk about, like a whole plethora of people that talk about their experiences being raised in these, call them whatever you want, Illuminati, Cabal, whatever it is, where they're doing these secret things, they're doing these rituals. And I know for the kids, they're trained, I know this is disgusting, but at very young ages, they're trained to kill with animals. And that causes a lot of trauma for the ones that leave when they can. That's a lot of trauma they have to work through. Hey, you guys, editing Bryce here, and I was not planning on adding in the snippet from our roundtable that we did on Gnostic TV regarding the occult activity and people raised in occult, but I am going to add this in here in this editing process so that you can see a brief commercial of all of these whistleblowers that we're referring to, that Mike and I are referring to. He was a part of this roundtable event. So if you are new to this, or if you're interested in things like the Son of Sam and uncovering hidden mysteries behind crimes, and just to educate yourself on what's actually going on in our world, you can find that link down in the description box below as well for this roundtable event. And I'm just going to play a brief commercial for you guys, and then we'll get back to the story, back to the interview. Hello, everybody. If you are a fan of the occult, especially the darker side of the occult, if you like learning about the stuff that is done in the shadows, boy, do we have an event for you.
We want to welcome you to Tales of Survival from the Dark Side. Wow, what a lineup of speakers we have. I've had the privilege of meeting incredible survivors on my channel, Aquarius Rising Africa, over the past 4 years. And it's been an amazing journey for me to bring them over and just share with more new people sharing their stories.
Now, guys, this event is going to be held over on Gnostic TV, and
Indeed.
tickets are now on sale. They're 50% off, right, Shanti? So we have a link below. And also, if you want to watch the full trailer of the event, which cannot be shown on YouTube, you can hop over to Gnostic TV and watch that trailer as well. We're looking to release this panel live on Gnostic TV on Friday, October the 11th. At 11 a.m. Eastern time. So
tickets are 50% off, and once you've bought your ticket, you can watch as many shows as you want, and you can watch them as many times as you want. Support our survivors. They deserve to be heard, and there's nothing better, more healing for a survivor than to be told, I believe you.
So thank you, guys. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask Shanti or me down in the comment section below. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you guys over on Gnostic TV. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. And so again, and I don't know, like I said, with the Leslie Zaret, it could all just be one big coincidence. I don't know, but there does seem to be a lot of evidence to point that it's not.
It could, but again, you know, we discussed like the Wendy Savino case. We discussed this, and you know, to tie this stuff into Son of Sam is really a stretch. And you know, is there a cult behind Son of Sam that was there? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it could be that, or it could be something parallel, or it could be just a random thing where, you know, when something went wrong and she was strangled to death in a fit of rage by this prime suspect or even somebody else. Okay. But, you know, to attach it to the Son of Sam and start going down that road, you got to look at so many other different things, including other people's involvement, which when you start doing that, then you're throwing a monkey wrench into what law enforcement has said for the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's another problem too, isn't it? Yeah. And it could be, you guys, and when we say like it could be that it's not necessarily with the Son of Sam, but could be orchestrated by the same group, but just not in the same. So there's so many different possibilities. I just feel really, I feel my heart is broken for the remaining family members of Leslie to not have closure on this and to not see justice served for the life that was lost. Because reading through the stuff I got to read of yours, Chris's, and even looking at the New York Times article I just pulled up, she just seemed like a normal, happy-go-lucky 17-year-old girl. It talked about how she was calling her dad to let him know, you know, like just a good girl that did not deserve that.
Yeah, and in the beginning of the show, when you said, you know, you want to do justice for Leslie, and you know, unfortunately, there's been some podcasters in recent months that have taken on this case and almost made a mockery of it and made jokes about her her assault and eventual murder, and joking about it in their podcasts. You're a bunch of lowlives as far as I'm concerned. I just hope that we did this justice. We did Leslie a little justice here to talk about it. It was a horrible murder. It's still a cold case as far as I'm concerned. I don't think you could attach this to really anything that's known. Unfortunately, the NYPD botched it, and which they do so often, even today, related to Son of Sam, namely the Savino case. I'm not afraid to say it. But the losing the clothing and other important articles, if they were lost in that fire, okay, fine, that's it. But I don't believe that's the case, Christina, right? Because they didn't lose it in that fire.
It was lost before then, and the psychic had told the source that she believed that the clothes might be somewhere in the Brooklyn evidence locker, and that they were misplaced, and they would eventually turn up. And now, well, doesn't look like that's going to turn out, because the Brooklyn evidence locker has burned down.
Yeah. So,
but based on, what you just said about some people not being particularly respectful of Leslie's memory, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there on her case, and the media. It's not just podcasts. So, some of the things that are reported in these podcasts, it's not necessarily their fault, because they're relying on media information. Yet at the same time, I know whenever I initially talked to one source, the first thing out of the source's mouth, and this was the first contact that I made relay to Leslie, she said, you're not with so-and-so podcast, are you? And you're not with the media, are you? And she brought up this specific podcast, which she felt that was disrespectful to the memory, and stated some problems that she had with the podcast. And I can see, based on the contents, one issue that I have with the podcast after watching it, is these guys were in the woods. They found a pair of pants around a tree, and one podcaster joked, "Oh, it looks like people's pants are just getting ripped off in the woods." And then another guy laughs, and it's insensitive, because Leslie Zaret was strangled. Her clothes were removed, including her pants. Right. And a comb was inserted post-mortem. And, maybe they weren't thinking whenever they made the podcast, and thought it would be cute to just, people's pants are getting torn off in these woods. And then the other guy just couldn't help himself and laughed uncontrollably. But it's really not funny,
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into all that. I just know that, today we try to talk about this factually, what's known, what's not known. And Christine, I want to thank you so much for, coming on and giving a lot of this. I mean, you've done a lot of research with this case, probably more than anybody I've seen.
Yeah, and if I would just like to make one final comment. I post under my blogs under Criminal Justice Chris, for my own privacy and safety, and like I've discussed this with Bryce, because she brought to my attention that my full name was up there, and I made sure to change it before. But the main reason why I podcast under the artistic pseudonym, or not podcast, but blog under the artistic pseudonym, is because I do volunteer work. I had to pass a background check for it with people who have criminal records in my state that were in either low to medium to maximum security. I have safety issues. I'm a private person. My name shouldn't be out there. Even the people that I volunteer with that have criminal records do not know my full name. So there is a reason why my full name is not displayed. And I would appreciate it if you know my full name, not to put it in the comments. Bryce has agreed if they are put in the comments that they will promptly be removed.
Absolutely.
So,
we respect that.
hopefully that adequately explains, because this has been explained to others as well.
Right.
And I will say, as far as I'm concerned, as when people come on my channel, you have every right to privacy. Human beings have a right to privacy, and so yes, if your identity is put in, I will absolutely delete that and block that person, because that's not what this is about, and it's absolutely understandable as to why you've kept yourself more anonymous with this. And it's about Leslie. At the end of the day, it is about Leslie. Now, with that being said, Chris, I'm going to put your blog links. If somebody by chance sees this and they have information that they would like to get to you, is there a contact through your blog, or is there a way for them to get in touch with you?
Through Medium. You can open an account with Medium for free. You can comment on the blogs. There is not a direct way to contact me through Medium other than just the comments in the blog.
You'll see the comments.
Otherwise, I have an Instagram account under Criminal Justice Chris, and I suppose you can message me through the Instagram account.
Direct message, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys, and I will say too, I just want to, as we started this, I just wanted to honor, like, it makes me like hearing you guys talk about people just trying to degrade Leslie's name. It makes me, and I can't cry because I've got eyeliner on, or it'll look awful, but I'm Southern, but we're Southern down here. As a woman, in all seriousness, Leslie is all of us. Every woman that grew up in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, before we had cell phones, when we would just go out in the neighborhood with our friends, she's all of us. She's all of us. And how dare you? This was a 17-year-old child. 17.
I
She
agree.
wasn't even a legal adult yet. And you, how dare you? How dare you degrade her name in such a manner? She did not cause this to happen. She was a victim. She is the victim here. And I'm sorry for those men who don't understand this. I know Mike does. I know a lot of good men do understand this. And a lot of young girls don't understand this, because I was that young girl once. If a man wants to do something to you, he can definitely overpower you. And in my opinion, Leslie was young and naive and innocent. She had probably still had that innocence about her, where she would have never assumed somebody would have hurt her, and that unfortunately happens to many women when they're young, is that they don't realize the danger that you are as a woman. Even I turned 42 tomorrow, and I still at 42 am aware of my surroundings. The older I get, the more aware. And I appreciate good men like you, Mike, and like my boyfriend, who would never hurt a woman in that way. There's more good men out there than not, thank God. But she was young and naive, and she had her whole life in front of her. And what happened to her was, in that sense, was still not her fault, because we should live in a world where 17-year-old girls can go out with their friends and not have to worry about this happening.
And just ponder this for a second, okay? If it turned out to be the prime suspect, if it was him, he was a friend of the family.
Yeah.
This is something that she probably had never thought in a million years the guy would do anything to her. He was always around. He knew the family, knew the parents. He was a safe person to be with. Who knows how that played out, okay? So it had to be, such a betrayal.
That's the exact word I was thinking, Mike, betrayal.
Right. And it cost her her life. For anybody to make light or make a joke of anything that happened that night to that woman, of that young girl, is disgusting. And that's all I got to say about that. But it's the world we live in today.
And
well, I also clearly want to say, and I don't know if I said this earlier in the podcast, it's also been implied through media sources and podcasts that, she could have gone into the woods and was partying with whomever did it, and might have been smoking marijuana. She was not smoking marijuana. Toxicology report came back negative. She was not smoking. Toxicology report came back negative. She was not ingesting alcohol. Toxicology report came back negative. Please quit implying that Leslie had been drinking the night that she was abducted. And even if she was doing any of this, it doesn't justify her.
I did that at 17. Who didn't do that? I think that's not that. It says nothing. That it still is does not justify the fact that, yeah, you're right, Chris. It doesn't justify the fact that what happened to her happened to her. And I just, for all the men out there saying these disgusting things, pay attention to the little girls around you and think, put your like. These are little innocent girls. She at 17, if I look back at my 17-year-old self, I was still a little girl at that point. I was only 4 years out from playing with Barbies. So have some grace and some mercy and some respect to the life that was lost, because and you're right. As you were saying that, Mike, I thought betrayal too, because there are boys that I grew up with that were friends of the family that I spent a lot of time with, who are around my age, maybe a little bit older. And thinking back, even now, I would absolutely trust them because I know them and I grew up with them. I can't imagine that feeling, putting myself in her shoes, if the prime suspect did it, of seeing one of these guys that I grew up with, that I feel like is like a brother to me, to turn around and do in that last moment, to realize that betrayal. My heart just breaks. I want to cry. It just breaks for her. If that is the prime side, part of me almost wants it to be someone she didn't know, so that she didn't have that feeling of that betrayal. I'm sorry that I hope that Leslie, if you're listening, I hope you are finding peace, that you're resting in peace. And I hope that any family members left can find peace. And I believe that if her parents are no longer living, that they are also with Leslie now. And I hope that they are. And I thank you, Chris, for bringing this case back up and for trying to bring some justice to this girl, because she's us. She's all of us. And
hopefully at this point, the NYPD and the FBI takes greater action trying to solve this case, whether it's mass spectrometry or what other scientific methods have advanced in recent years. I'm really hoping that the FBI completely takes over this case, because the NYPD has mismanaged it.
Yeah. And if we get, this might be just my opinion, if we get Kash Patel in as the FBI director, man, oh man, I think he's going to start going after some of these cold cases, especially with some government mishandlings are involved. And so I just thank you so much, Chris, for resurrecting this case. I was even going to ask you, I know we kind of talked about it off camera, but I thank you for resurrecting this case and giving Leslie a voice, even all these years later. And Mike, I thank you for bringing this to my channel. And I'd love to have you back, Chris and Mike, of course. Mike, I told you to just text me if you want to come on. So especially if we have any follow-up questions about this, or I know I've got a lot of viewers who are up in the New York area. And so I definitely thank you for bringing this case forward. And I hope that it is my true hope that Leslie is resting in peace.
Well, I've done a lot of blogs lately, and you can just go through and read and see what is most appealing to you. And I would come back if you want me back on. I think a case that might appeal to you as well is Eitan Patz, and I recently did a blog on him.
Absolutely.
It's another case that's been mishandled.
We'd love it. We'd love it. I'd love to have both you guys come back on. Let's anytime. Chris, you're welcome. Mike, obviously, I've just told you, just text me and we'll do a show, because this is important. This is really important, because we see with corruption in government. I'm not saying all government people are corrupt. We know that, but when there is corruption, it's up to the people to course correct and do the best we can to get justice for our fellow citizens and our fellow humans. So I guess I'll end this saying, guys, all of Mike's links will obviously be in the description box below. I'll put his episodes with Chris from before and the dealing with the Son of Sam case. And then also Chris's blog will be in the description box below too. Please make sure that you are subscribed to everything. And I thank you guys. And I guess I'll just end with, again, rest in peace, Leslie. Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, people.